Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking our time during these very uncertain times and joining in today. I hope you and your families are all safe. I am Anayata Taneja, co-director of Shrine Empire, a gallery based in New Delhi. It's my pleasure to welcome you for our second session of conversations for Shrine Empire's recent exhibition, Spatial Dialogues. The exhibition is shut currently due to the lockdown in Delhi, and we hope to extend it and open it during better times. This exhibit explores conversations between architects and artists based on a range of materiality, dimensions, personality, and imagination, working with each other, grasping ideas of form, extending them into each other's terrain. The exhibit provides a third space for thinking of the built environment, architectural form, and artistic effect. The exhibition has 4 collaborations, that of Parul, Gupta and Madhav, Raman, Abhimanyu, Dalal and Ayesha Singh, Ravinder Gundu Rao and Shruti Mahajan, Martan Khosla, and with his team. The exhibition has stemmed from a dialogue of how architecture has inspired artists and how art has been an inspiration for architects. The collaborations were left to discuss and develop their ideas together over months, during which their research and conversations led to these fabulous installations at the gallery. The first round of conversations today are with founder partner Red Architects Rajiv Parekh, artist Parul Gupta and Madhav Raman, principal and co-founder at Anagram Architects. We will watch the video of Parul and Madhav's collaborative work at the gallery, after which I will hand it over to Rajiv Parekh to take this forward. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess that's me taking over now. So Parul and Madhav both. I mean, Parul is someone who I've interacted with when we tried to do a collaboration. When we did a collaboration between our studio and her, and she visited Bombay and she worked with some of the kids in the studio. So I'm familiar with her work. And Madhav's a dear friend, though I like his partner Vaibhav a lot more. He dances much better than Madhav. But that aside, I think the installation they've done, which they've chosen to call Meta Prism, I think our attempt. So regrettably, I was not able to physically go and see this installation. So I had to, talk to both of them and understand better from them, and then depend on videos and photographs myself. I do intend, whenever things ease up, to definitely make my way to the gallery and take a look at it personally. And I'll request both of y'all to come so that we have a guided tour. Having said that, I think what you're seeing on screen flashing now are some of their process sketches, drawings, pictures of the installation in progress. And I'm going to request both, maybe we start with Madhav. No, we should start with Parul. Come on, ladies first. So having said that, I think, so because also, like you said, the starting point for the work was some of Parul's early sketches, some of her works. And from that, Madhav and you guys sort of started a dialogue. So Parul, if you can tell us a little bit about, I know you guys had first dibs. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So if you go back to the first slide, before this, the first one, the drawing basically. Yeah. So hi everyone. What Rajiv was talking about, like our collaboration, which initially started from my drawings. But after we had a conversation, many conversations about what we intend to do and all that, So we started from these drawings, and I shared some of these. One which we are showing right now. I shared these drawings with Madhav, and can we go to next slide, Rajiv? Can we go to next slide? I don't know who is controlling the slides.
Yeah, no, Shrine is. So.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, after sharing these drawings with Madhav, we worked on these drawings and kind of created these drawings from them. Just slow down, please. Okay, it's too fast. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have noticed the process. It went through a process of 2D and then getting a form in 3D, and then we kind of made this prototype of the 3D. And yeah, I mean, Madhav, can you come in and like, because here you actually came.
I would say it's not just ladies first. The problem, as you know, Parul, is if I start talking, then very difficult to get me to shut up. But since as Rajiv has introduced me as a dear friend, whose friend he prefers to hang out with, I'm sure he'll be rude enough to stop me if I carry on. No, but really the thing is that Parul's work is something that has a characteristic of being an initiator. You have to really look at her work very, very carefully. There's almost a meditative quality to her gem. So it was almost obvious that should be where we started, because a lot of our conversation had to do with not, it had to do with manipulation of geometries and space and things like that. It didn't have any sort of other more subjective sort of motivations. So what happened was I asked her to kind of share some of her work with me. She shared, I think, some 20, 25 images of stuff she'd done. And essentially that got converted. I converted that into some sort of drawing, sort of X form in 3D, and sent it back to her. Then she came back with a few more ideas. And then eventually it kind of broke into a situation where we were making small models of what we were talking about. And literally the model would go from my studio to her studio, then it would change and it would come back. So that was the kind of process that we had adopted. It was, I mean, honestly speaking, at the beginning, we thought the art would be about the process. And it would essentially talk about that process. So in an interesting way, it's taken on its own kind of life, while it is very much driven by the process that we undertook.
Yeah, so since this is called Spatial Dialogues, the whole exhibition as a group, I know you guys had the first dibs on choosing the space where you would display your work. But I think what you guys said is that so if you can just elaborate on the fact that how you dealt with context or ignored it, and also that if you were to now having built this fellow, and if you were to relook at context or positioning it or locating it differently, how would you do it?
So Parul, you want to go first?
Yeah, so we were thinking of a space with like initially also we thought, but the structure got a little late in terms of its fabrication and all. So we were thinking if it had come in time, probably we have covered the room or the space around with glass itself to just see more interaction with the space and all that. So that was one thing which probably we would want to do now at some point. Yeah, in the space, that is one thing. And apart from that, we are also thinking of putting it out in a landscape, how this will gonna respond to a landscape kind of a setting with the tree canopy coming in, and the multiple angles and perspectives it will carry. So something like that. Madhav, you want to add?
I think we first met at the gallery to kind of at least going in personally, I would say, even given that the idea of this being a collaboration between an artist and an architect, there was a general as an architect, your context antenna go out and they say, oh, if it's space, it has to have context. Right. But it was almost when we visited the gallery for the first time and we actually sat and spoke, we didn't find ourselves speaking about the gallery and its various nooks and corners in so much detail. Or at any rate, when we were speaking about it, nothing kind of called out to us and said it has to be here or it has to be there or something like that. But I do know that that conversation was, I think, a good starting point, because we actually got the opportunity to talk about what we didn't want to do. And like, for example, I expressed my opinion to not want to use cement, concrete, brick. I want to continue on
your day-to-day materials,
but I'll stop there. But these kind of very obviously architectural materials, because I wanted to use this opportunity to work with Parul on what attracted me to her work, which was this plane geometries, right? So that I said, and Parul can obviously say what she said, but basically there was a lot of discussion on what we didn't want to do. And essentially, even our sense of material was the palette was completely open. We, at one point in time, we were talking about water. At another point in time, we were talking about, plastics or something. And so we were all over the place, but there was a lot of clarity about it. Helped us, I think, focus on this idea of just looking at, having a conversation between the two of us through geometry, by adding more and more twists and turns to a dialogue in, lines and geometries between the two of us.
Yeah. So then taking off from sort of geometries, the fact that, there are, Parul's sketch or drawing, actually, not sketch, was all about cubes and intersecting cubes. So I know you sort of took that into a three-dimensional sort of extrusion. Now, I think what you guys have done, and if you can sort of elaborate more on that, on how, even the physical model, which I saw, where one part of it dissolves, literally disappears, and how you've sort of played around with the mirror being the visible part and the glass being the invisible part. But I think the fact that even through that, there is a layer and layer of reflection, which actually the transparency is causing a multiplicity of reflection. So I think your whole idea of how the intersecting geometries, the sizes of the cubes, so if you can tell me how you sort of determined that, and how that study of light that you guys paid attention to. Madhav now, maybe. So.
Okay. See, I'll tell you, it's very interesting now when I think about it in hindsight. I think one thing I've understood is that this idea of skewing or displacing inherent geometry. So very simply put, this is just two cubes that have overlapped with each other. But that the skew in the overlap or the displacement is actually the instigator of new geometries. This is true even if you were working with pen and paper. If you like if you have a grid of columns in a plan or something like that, and then you have another grid that superimposes on it, you start seeing corners and niches and voids very, very differently, right? Now, the thing is that what actually happened was that initially, I guess my first instinct was to take her two-dimensional drawing and actually sculpturize it. I don't know, Parul, if you'll agree with me, but that X-form initial model that I made and sent back to you essentially was asking the question that why must we not take the same kind of skewed square composition into a more third dimension? And actually it was Parul who kind of came back with something that was more in lines with a formed cube, but it was full of voids. So in a sense, the conversation was almost going into grounds where we were trying to create these almost recognizable platonic forms, like almost a cube. So while actually, if I were to, look at this as a block model, this is very sharply and very distinctively, clearly two cubes that have overlapped. But when you're there looking at the sculpture, so much of what you see is the complexity that's inside this volume and not what the object looks like from outside, that the sense of it being two cubes overlapped completely gets demolished, So what I find interesting is you take simple platonic shapes, overlap them, use a material that is the perfect binary, right? Like a mirror versus pure glass, right? Pure transparency versus pure reflectivity. And if you're able to manage that manipulation just right, the insides of these volumes just become these scattered infinite spaces, which is what I found really super exciting when this came together, you know?
Yeah. So I think sorry, Parul, you have anything to
No,
add to
yeah,
Madhav?
exactly what Madhav said. So it was like with the cube and all coming together. And yeah, exactly what he said, the same thing I have to
The
say, nothing
pink and
more.
green thing is essentially what Parul,
I mean, we have been discussing this so much. Yeah, go on.
we've been like making these models, but that pink and thing came back to me as a photograph of a model that she was putting together in her studio. So then
Hmm.
we kind of worked on it. Then she came over to studio and then we tried various shapes to figure out, my motivation as an architect was to try and see how will things stabilize in gravity, right? That is also a primary concern of mine.
Right.
Yeah, that is one thing
Illustration
where
was
we kind
also,
of worked.
sorry?
Sorry. Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, you please carry on.
No, I was continuing with that was one thing with the whole idea of how this gonna stand and the whole thing of gravity and all that, it will gonna stand on its own. So there we had some issues in terms of what form will gonna come, what form should become, which can stand on its own. So initially we were also thinking like the sculpture right now you're seeing, I mean the prototype, there's this one cube which is tilted. So it was difficult. So we were thinking, can the corner of a room, if the
Right.
possibility of that holding it, but we were not sure because if we had put it in the corner, then the whole idea of moving around it or inside
Right.
it, probably if we had not used the transparent glass, that had completely gone. So that's
Right.
when we kind of shifted the form again. So
And
these kind of dialogues.
adjusted the height so that it's kind of,
Yeah.
you're able to see inside it slightly. You can see on top of it, but there have been a bunch of discoveries after it's been made also.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
actually, I think what one of the points which when we spoke yesterday that you brought up, which, you called it the well of infinite views, right? Because, and that's what I find the most like intriguing and why I'm dying to sort of get myself in Delhi and take a circle around this, like a pradakshina around the cube. Because what you kind of said is that the fact that it's mirror and transparency, but when you have the visitor walking around, one thing which you pointed out, which kind of makes sense when I think about it, is that because I am seeing myself in some sort of fragment, at some level, and then I'm seeing myself, 3 degrees behind or 4 degrees into the cube. So one part of me is literally on the skin of the cube, and the other part of me is the other part of my reflection is sort of has gone inside the cube, even though I can't physically sort of inhabit that space. So I found that something that, and the fact that you mentioned that, it forces you to keep sort of moving and recalibrating your position. Therefore, you're unable to really fixate and say, this is the vantage point to experience A perspective, or this is the other vantage point to experience B perspective, So that was intentional or accidental, or, how did you guys bump into that attribute of the work? Like you strategically placed it at a diagonal. I know it's not aligned parallel.
No, I think we were completely engrossed in the binary of the material. I mean, it really, see, that's the thing. I think, at least for me, the big step out of the way I would have normally proceeded to think about something like this was to imagine it as an object in a space. But working with Parul, this kind of became an exercise of overlapping structural panel, size, type of geometry, scale, type of geometrical questions, right? But once it's come together, I actually feel what it's ending up doing is what Parul would normally do with ink on paper or a pencil on paper, or what I would perhaps do as lines on a screen or something like that. Actually, this is like a geometry of light, because if we consider lights as rays or whatever, they just enter this cube through various angles where they're not reflecting. and then they bounce about inside. So what you see as these infinite pools and infinite vistas that you can see inside this block, it looks completely different when you look at it from up top. It looks really different from various, I mean, it's a 360, like you said. If you go around it, every step you take, it changes. Is essentially because inside is just full of light bouncing around in various sorts of ways, And I find that very interesting because, like, you look at it in some places, I still see such a strong resonance of Parul's work in this. Her kind of gender, because there are these places where corners stretch and then they break into angles and overlapping lines and stuff as you look at it. But you can't deny it's a spatial object. It's not a two-dimensional thing in any way, means, or form, So,
right. Coming to your question, Rajiv, also, you asked about how did we come together to think of where the reflection part will come, where the transparency will come. That is actually guided through the drawing process only. So we also realize in the process that the mirror has a lot of agency to itself and we can't really control it too much. So we kind of caught onto the drawing only and worked through the drawing. So the drawing kind of took that form and the infinite pool on its own without us actually thinking or working on it specifically. Yeah. So I would say that's the agency of the material.
No, in this image which we are kind of looking at right now, the right-hand side, when you look at that sort of little bit sort of the diamond shape, it's almost diamond-like in terms of the number of facets that you see inside. And that's what had me, because having not seen it, I was very like, okay, what is this? Like, are there more cubes inside? Have they actually created this form? Like, it's almost like, you'd imagine you were inside a cave and then you had these sort of like an abstraction of the icicles coming down. So in my head, that was all which was going on.
You say that your reflection is also scattered. What I think it does when I look at it in, like, when you see it physically, what it seems to do is your mind is constantly asking this question that are these facets of a sort of a object, or is it like a pool? You don't know if it's coming out at you or if it's going in,
Exactly. The image does that for sure.
Yeah. No, and actually it does. It's kind of slightly illusionary in that sense, because if you stare some angles, you suddenly feel it's coming at you. But in various other ways, it just sinks you into like infinity, these where mirror against mirror, it just causes these infinite reflections.
Right. So if you had to, so I think one question that both of you all didn't sort of answer is, if you were to place, actually no, maybe Parul did, that she said she could put in a landscape and stuff like that. But why did you all go from a 7 foot by 7 foot, like larger? I think there was a conversation that you all examined the possibility of making this a space which you go into versus an object which you circumvent. What was that sort of, what made you all make that choice?
Other than the practicalities of it, I just feel that I don't recall, but we really weren't speaking too much of, in terms of perspectives that we would create or, space. I mean, we knew that obviously there is space inside this volume that is, and therefore the question is always what happens when you enter a space that, so right. But it didn't, like Parul said, we didn't go about manufacturing these volumes with that intent that, oh, if you see it from here, you will see that, or, your reflection will come through here and overlap with something else. It didn't get that deterministic at all. I think halfway through, when the size of it actually started being the question to answer, right? Should it be 3 feet? Should it be 5 feet? Should it be what?
Yeah.
Other than, obviously putting it together is a big question. Size becomes a question. But as a spatial experience, I think for me, this idea where it is neither too tall, where you are expected to enter and therefore it naturally becomes a space, or it's so small that you are expected to look at it from the outside. This kind of halfway home further blurs the sense that this is an object. And I think the potential in the landscape, I don't know, Parul, if you want to explain that, but the sheer idea that you could be drawing reflections from like 100 meters away, actually, depending on which landscape you're in,
Yeah, no, so which is what I honestly thought, And, it reminded me that if I was to scale this up or make it almost like a city level installation, like scale wise, would it sort of, I drew this analogy to the cloud, and I think both of you all kind of did not completely agree with it. And fair enough, it is different in that sense.
All
But
that shines is not gold, Rajiv.
Sorry?
I said all that shines is not gold.
All that shines is not gold. Yeah. No, but I do feel like, the layering of, or the beauty of this is the context that it's placed in. So if you were to put it in one of your projects where there was a different sort of space around it, anything. It could be, like Parul said, in a landscape. It could be in a hotel atrium. It could be at so many different places where you would constantly have, a different sort of take on it, depending on what your vantage point was. And that's what I find is sort of, I'm repeating it, but the fact that you did not consider a vantage point is now the coolest thing about it, that literally from everywhere I look at it, has a different interpretation and a different story, and if I compare this to, and which is, I personally think versus a physical painting as an object of art, which is, even Parul's work, like you said, there's a meditative sort of thing. Like you can stand in front of it and look at those lines, and when her sort of pen is going a little fat to a thin, or if her line is slowing down, her hand is going faster or slower, is kind of calibrating the thickness of that line, has a sort of trance-like quality when you stand in front of it. But it's experienced in that sort of one vantage point,
Yes.
While this kind of has that.
Some of her stuff, she, like, when I met her in Jaipur, she'd actually taken over one corner of Jawahar Kala Kendra. So it was but it was kind of very much defined by that corner. The thing for me, actually, if you consider this as a spatial dialogue, this is not necessarily just a dialogue between Parul and me, which was the process, right? This object would be, it's such a non-object that it is forcing dialogue with whatever the context that it is kept in, and it will be a different dialogue. Essentially because it completely relies on what is outside the sculpture or this object for defining itself. That's the reason we called it metaprism. It's kind of self-referential because of the reflection that happens in it,
Yeah. And just one last thing, I think we have.
I think I should stop talking because now Parul she's.
Yeah, now.
No, nothing like
now,
no, you can continue, Madhav.
Now this question is only to.
And I know,
only to Parul.
I should have stopped talking.
No. So this is a question only to Parul, even though. So Madhav, you're not allowed to answer this.
No, you please. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so Parul, did you have to hold Madhav back? Because he's used to, like he, and I'm quoting him here, that he's used to designing things that are a repository for function, and then since here there was no function to this object, did you have to hold him back and say, no, don't make it inhabitable, make it, so did you have to hold him back, or?
I don't think I had to ever hold him back in that sense, but there were some points when I was like, we have to consider space right now very important over here, because so I remember clearly a conversation when we were thinking about whether we should make it an object or the conversation on the scale level, what scale it should be, how anyone who will come across will gonna experience it or move around it. So I think we had conversations, but nothing like, holding him back and all that. And I think Madhav has been very open to ideas and suggestions, and also, no, not at all. Not at all.
Madhav, seal of approval.
The quality of the ideas. Rajiv knows, because when he gives me ideas, that's
completely
why he
rejects them.
Yeah, I think that's also the reasoning has to be right, because I only enter when I feel like, okay, now it's going to be too crazy. I don't think it should go like that. So yeah, but then he asked for the reason also, why you think that. So that's the important thing to be to be clear about.
Right. No, that's great. I think, look at this image. It's spectacular right now. What we're looking at is just, it completely is your metaprism, that I think you described it as a device that allows light to bounce around it and in it. So I think if you look at the image currently on the screen, so I don't know if I'm allowed to take questions now. There's just
there's another thing which is there's another thing which we missed speaking about it is the whole idea of how it's allowing the viewer to perform around it. And it's kind of a performative element and, a stage where like now the viewer is performing around it and the other way around. So that's another thing which we kind of discovered once it was done. So yeah, that was one point.
That might be interesting to have put a camera hidden inside the cube, which is observing people as they walk around it, making faces, cleaning their teeth.
The geek in me is saying drone.
So cool. But yeah, I think it's great. I think my sort of 2 bits on it before I end. So just a quick question to there's just one person who's asked a question. Should I bring that up on the panel now, or you guys want to do it towards the tail end?
So there's just one question, Rajiv. Do you want to take it up now with Parul and Madhav?
Yeah, that's what I thought. So Mrudul has basically put up a question. That's Mrudul L. And hello, Mrudul. How are you? So nice to have you on the chat. But no, that aside, I think her question is that what if Madhav's cube actually turns into a real building inside out?
Oh.
So,
Madhav, you answer.
We'll need to hire an exceptionally good communication designer for signage, I suspect. Wayfinding and navigation. No.
Lots of people will be banging into things, injuring themselves.
No, I think one of the how shall I say, the releases I had in this process was, like I said, the repository of function is also to say that, not everything that one does has to end up being a building. And that kind of releases your thinking in various ways. So I don't think I want to make a building that looks like this inside out. At least not right now. We can never say.
We can revisit it.
Yeah.
When he's commissioned specifically for that by a client. Bhaiya, wahi building ki. Cool. Thank you, guys. I think I'm dying to come and see it, honestly. So I'm pretty sure whoever has been a part of this conversation, and I think looking at your sketches and the process, now I have some more insight and even more curious to walk around with a camera in my pocket hidden just to see what happens. But thank you, both of you all.
Thanks so much,
Thank you, Rajiv.
It was fun. Thank you.
And thank you for this wonderful and engaging conversation, Rajiv, Parul, and Madhav. It was wonderful to see the process in detail. I will now go forward to our second conversation today between Rajiv Parekh, artist Ayesha Singh, and Abhimanyu Dalal, principal architect at Abhimanyu Dalal Architects. We will now see the video of the installation at the gallery.
Rajiv, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi, Ayesha. Hi, Abhimanyu.
Hi, Rajiv.
So Ayesha, I met in Ahmedabad when we were at one of her exhibitions where something we had done was also installed, and I have loved a fair amount of her work. And Mr. Dalal, we of course know your work very well. Having seen both of you all working in this project, in this installation, which you guys have titled Inversion, Incision, and Immateriality, I think the video is enigmatic and again, similar to my previous conversation, that I'm at a loss for not having seen it. I wish I could have. But again, I think the idea that you guys explained to me is that, and something Ayesha pointed out, is that India has over 1,000 languages, and your installation has worked on, but only 100 scripts. So a lot of the languages share a common script. So you guys have toyed around with, approximately 100 scripts, give or take, and have created this. So I mean, I'm going to try and describe what I understand from the video. Is essentially that there is an inverted pyramid, which has alphabets as cutouts, and 2 or 3 projectors within it, which are rotating to create shadows on the outside, right? So if I can ask you guys to elaborate on the choice of the alphabet, and are they just alphabets or are they words? And, if the words have specific meanings or a theme or something like that. And I know the cutouts look inverted, but the shadows are what you want us to read. Is that, yeah. So if you can just tell us about that, either one of you all.
Yeah, India has more than 1,000 spoken languages, out of which over 100 have used script. And a lot of the spoken languages use a similar script, such as there might be many that use Oriya as a script, or Devanagari, or the Roman script, for example. And so what we did was to pick up on the written scripts of today, but also those from the past. And put them on the pyramid in a way, it's designed as such that can allow for multilingual languages to be created onto the architecture of the space. So correctly said, when you look at the pyramid, you will see the word inverted or alphabets inverted, whereas when you look at the walls of the space or the floor of the space, you will see it the way that you usually are used to reading it. And multilingual words in the sense that some already exist within the design, and some are created when 2 beams of light cross onto the same panel and layer alphabet on alphabet to create those words, either by chance or by design. Mr. Dalal, do you want to talk about the lights?
Yeah, sure. The projectors really are very strong light sources that move. And there are 3 of them, 2 of them just throwing light, where these words overlay with each other. And the third one is what is called a gobo, which has a rotating cutout of alphabets on it. Now, when the other 2 projectors overlap, and this third projector then throws an alphabet on it, it often completes an incomplete word in the script that we have designed it to be. And that incompletion is what we are talking about as a source of inclusiveness, where people complete the picture on their own. They see new things happening. There are accidental things. Like what we looked at Parul and Madhav's work also, you begin to see things happening which you don't necessarily plan for. And this is an important part of what we were looking at. Ayesha, would you like to just talk about some of these sketches?
Yeah, these are our initial drawings of what we were thinking of. I think one more thing that I want to say was that with the words, there would be words in certain languages that are completed by alphabets from other languages. So it might be an Urdu word that reads from right to left, but it might have English and Punjabi in it, for example. And then there are spaces where you have an English word that completes an English word, or an Oriya word or a word that is written in Assamese, but read in another language.
Basically, what you're saying is that I need to know 100 scripts if I want to understand everything that's written in this installation. Is that like a disclaimer at the entrance to the room? It's like, unless you know 100 scripts, please don't walk in.
Not at all.
No, no.
So I'd just like to add on that. Sometimes when you read one or two scripts and you just see those alphabets instantaneously, you imagine a word. And that imagination is part of what we intended. And somehow people would make their own words happen if they just recognize even one alphabet or two alphabets. And so then words come out with a number of alphabets and things like that. So that was how we imagined it. It'd be great to have somebody know all the languages, but yeah.
No, that's part of the collaboration, right?
Yes.
So, I think you know Vietnamese, I think Gujarati, Hindi, and English, and Ayesha knows Punjabi and a little bit of Urdu. So at least between two of y'all, we have 6 languages, 6 scripts covered. And then maybe we find a few more people and then everyone can walk in together. So, but no, what I love actually is honestly the fact that, even though I tried to bully both of y'all into telling me or giving me a list of all the words, you have refrained. So I think now I'm intrigued. Like there's that mystery of going in there and trying to sort of, solve the puzzle. There's always something very exciting about, when you hold back a certain amount and allow people to then experience it for themselves and arrive at their own sort of assumptions, interpretations, even deciphering code kind of thing, right? Almost. I think that's what I find very sort of, like it incites curiosity, it wants you to sort of do this, and maybe you find a bunch of friends and then it becomes more of what you're saying, inclusive and collaborative, where you have friends from different communities, different regions, different geographies, different cultures, trying to walk in together just to figure it out, I think that's beautiful. I think that's the sort of mystery of the work,
in fact,
which has
Rajiv,
this sort of aura.
Yeah. We spoke to a lot of people. People from different parts of the country who gave us words that we wrote down and then we tried to mix them about. And so that it was a lot of fun doing that, and people would always come up with hidden meanings and words. And, we finally got them all to put things together.
Nice.
It's been quite a huge collaborative exercise, but then also that tells you so much about in Delhi itself, which we don't really always think of it as like a super inclusive space, but it tells you that there is that multiplicity, right? That a lot of, I think, our conversations also spoke about was that inclusiveness in terms of hybridity, multiplicity that we embody against the grain of a sort of one identity.
So now, I know the main pyramid is the Big Daddy, and that's the one kind of inverted. But the smaller pyramid there, what is the role that you guys envisage for that? I mean, right there. I mean, those lines are beautiful. I love. Actually, I love the under process. I think there's one more image which where you all are testing out a model to see how it sort of how the light falls and how the word is legible. There are some images of that which are also they're kind of, it's a great sort of reveal to show you guys in process. But yeah, sorry.
It was something that we often talked about. I kept telling Ayesha that in architecture, the best part of the building is the process, the building it, at the incompletion. When a building is coming up and there's scaffolding on it, and the first glass window has come up, but everything else is lying empty. That's when imagination and inclusiveness and incompletion sets in. And so, these diagrams that you see, or these little models with string, is what actually is the crux of the pyramid. The incompletion of it in a way. And so this is when we were testing. The way the process started, we had actually thought of something on the outdoors, a maze or a folly. And both these then required ideas of sun and shadow. And then how people would move through a folly or a maze, and how letters in the screens and the sun and people would then all interact. Then slowly we started looking at the space itself. And that was an interesting thing that Ayesha and I began to discover that there is a space around a work of art. And that space then becomes, in an architectural sense, the object. So the space then becomes the object of the architecture and the art. And that's how these first photographs that you see is the beginning of trying to understand the work in a room rather than outside or free.
Yeah, initially we had gone through quite a few like iterations and ideas of what we'd want to do in the space, and then went to Shrine and started measuring the rooms and taking tape and sort of seeing how it would be placed, and realized, I mean, the one thing that we wanted to make sure, and then Mr. Dalal also was really pushing for, was to make sure that the body can navigate through the work, the body of the viewer, and sort of how that incompletion exists without the viewer's body. And then we realized that the work that we were envisioning initially, there wasn't enough space for us to implement the entire thing. And that's when we sort of reworked the entire work to this form. And yeah, all of those conversations that we did have initially, some ideas that were abandoned and some that were completely changed, then now like show up in the final work, which is unintentionally, intentionally, it's quite fascinating the way it embodies all of those complexities now.
It does. I mean, in terms of, I know in your work, like, you know, that ghost column, which I obsess about, you know, the one where it sort of spins and then you can see it, has that sort of consistency of exploration. And like here, what you guys have sort of arrived at is beautiful, because if I switch off the light, you know, the text is no longer legible, unless you think like, maybe like, you know, in your rearview mirror, you walk around with you walk around with Madhav and Parul's cube, you know, and you look at the reflection and then you read it. But yeah, so I think in the absence of light, the work disappears. And if the architecture around, like the enclosing walls, again, if they were to move away or sort of come closer together, again, the work would sort of no longer be legible. Let's say if I was to put this, let's say in a hotel atrium where there was no, so if the walls were so far away that your lights could not cast shadow on it, it would disappear, you know. So I think at many levels, I think the material immaterial sort of play that you kind of toy around with is there in the work, you know, that the light is otherwise immaterial and sort of it brings the word into existence by, you know, these things. I think one other thing which you guys also spoke about is, again, I think I discussed this with Madhav and Parul also, that I think in your work, I'm feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like when I enter the space, I might want to sort of stand in a corner and then try and absorb everything. You know, while in Madhav's work, from what he's sort of said, is that you're almost tempted to keep, and which I believe is like you're tempted to keep walking and looking at more of your silhouette. So here your silhouette or your shadow would be there, because as a viewer, when a participant is walking around the pyramid in the space, they will be casting shadow on the wall and blocking some of the words which would otherwise be legible, right? So imagine multiple people walking through, I'm blocking something, someone else. So what was your sort of thought process on that?
I think, you know, one thing, if I may say, a lot of Ayesha's work is silhouetted. And that's what's always attracted me to some of her work, whether it's against the sky, against each other, and she looks at multiple planes. So a lot of the initial ideas of sketching, you know, for an outdoor installation was with the idea of silhouetting the work, shadows and silhouettes. The human silhouette actually became a part of this as we developed the idea that if it's not the art, it's the people. It's the people that form a silhouette on the art. And so I think it is very much a part of the process, because even the light as it moves, there are lots of dark spots that happen on the walls. And the same thing happens with people walking around. You begin to see, you know, profiles of noses or heads or whatever. And it's this overlay of things that begin to then happen. So I think it's very much the idea of the silhouette and something that's moving all the time, changing.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, the work also absorbs the viewer's body. The viewer like completely becomes part of the work as well, when they're within this space. And I think that I was going to say was that the light is completely programmed to move in a certain way.
So it moves along a certain path. So are there points when it's so there would be alphabets which are not visible at certain points?
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
It's almost like a rhythm to it.
Yeah. In fact, because it's moving so much, when you first enter the space, it feels like the floor is shifting. A lot of people have asked me if the pyramid itself is moving, you know, so.
Oh, really? How? So it actually creates that perception of movement within the.
It creates a world of its own. So when you go in there, there's already so much happening physically on your body, but also like within, I mean, of course, one is if you might feel dizzy and so on, but the other thing is also you don't know what part is moving until you really figure it out or listen into this conversation.
True. So one other thing which I think someone has also asked, which anyway, so regarding the architect and the artist collaboration, what did each one of you all really gain from the interaction? And if you can tell us, like, what was the annoying part about collaborating with an artist and with an architect? So the good and the bad, Don't be all good here.
You know, Ayesha would keep asking me, can we have a sketch? You know, can we have a sketch? And this went on for about the whole year that, we passed. And I would tell her, listen, I mean, the sketches are not important. Let's talk about the ideas. And so I think artists love to put their ideas onto paper. Architects love that too, but it all happens at a very later stage. You know, at least with me, and I would sort of hibernate and think, and suddenly everything comes together. And I think Ayesha was very uncomfortable because she would come up with these lovely sketches and, she'll send them to me. And, I would feel really guilty, as somebody, I was sitting and not working, and here she is coming out with fabulous sketches. So, I think that was the beginning, how we started to get to know each other, in this process. This is a great photograph just showing exactly, but go ahead.
It is, yeah.
I was going to say, it's been, I was telling Mr. Dalal too, it's been a huge learning curve in terms of scaling up and just the amount of people involved and the amount of teams that come together to create something that's also very stable. Like you can push this pyramid and it's not going to go anywhere, like it's a very solid work.
It's built by an architect.
Yeah. And I joke that the place actually looked like a construction site. I have these videos where you have the rest of the gallery looking like a gallery, and then our room this completely like it with dust everywhere, breaking into the ceiling and all of that. And I hadn't done all that with my work before, but it feels like I've just passed that. Now I can think about that. I know how to sort of go deeper into the skeleton sort of structure of a building. And yeah, I mean, Mr. Dalal was super easy to work with and very open-minded. I really like that also with our age gap. It really didn't feel like much of it. Like he really respected all of my ideas as well. We had times when we were in contradiction with like certain things. And so we would talk it out and we discuss it. And I really enjoyed that process. So for me, this is,
nice.
Yeah.
I can see Mr. Abhimanyu's point though, that, architects are used to actually collaborating much more than I feel artists are. Because we'll end up collaborating with like carpenters and kariyas and, like 50 different agencies or sometimes 100 different agencies, from a lighting vendor to an air conditioning, like so many areas where a lot of other people sometimes have more expertise than you do in their sort of specific branch of like, if I'm looking at this, like, I'm sure the fabricator knew what to do versus, the carpenter versus the lighting guy. So I think architects are used to sort of having a lot more dialogue and then eventually drawing based on that dialogue. So I see your point. I'm on your side.
Yeah. And,
But,
invariably, Ayesha would always be nervous, how will we put it up? Who's going to do it? Where do we get the laser cutting? And here we are, architects, we know, we said, don't worry, it'll come up overnight.
Yeah, there was a lot of trust. There was a lot of trust and there's a lot of letting go in this whole process.
Which I think both, Madhav also mentioned that he would get all geeky about, the joinery detail of the glass and the mirror and the edges and stuff like that. And then Parul's like, since he was like so obsessed with it, I just let it go. Like, that's your baby, you had it kind of a thing. So which is nice. I think someone in the audience has asked one question. I think Mr. Deepak Jawahar. In your opinion, why do you think it's relevant for a cross-disciplinary collaboration between an artist and an architect? But I think we've kind of answered that here, that, broadly, there's a lot to gain. I think the artist thinks from a point of not necessarily an object which needs to be inhabited, or a space doesn't have to be a repository of function, as Madhav kind of called that out as. And here you're kind of doing something where you're inhabiting a space, and I think it results in a far more enriching installation experientially for the visitor and for the experiencer. So I think that's what his thing is.
Yeah, Rajiv, if I may add to that.
Sure, please.
The space within which the object sits itself becomes the work of art. And that's, I think, part of the collaborative process between an artist and an architect. The context is sort of brought in to the art itself. And here the context is people. Here the context are the four walls. The pyramid is actually twisted in those four walls. It sort of brings in the spatial scale to the work.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was really rewarding was the conversation that we've had, and the way we're both used to working with scale and architecture in very differently, and so bringing both our thoughts and practices together, I think that was, a very enriching experience.
Okay, so I think we have 3 more minutes, and I basically had one sort of, I don't know if it's intended or not, but I thought that, this whole idea of you guys using 100 different scripts, and I think Mr. Dalal basically spoke about it and said that, scripts are used often to be divisive, in that sense that, I speak Gujarati and Mr. Dalal does, so we will bond, but let's say you speak Punjabi, so we will not. But instead, I think you guys have intentionally, very strategically, made it a tool for being inclusive, wherein I almost need you to complete my word, for me to then get a complete understanding. So if I have to decipher this, I think it's in that sense, it's very like, if you look at a one religion or one language kind of ideology or a philosophy, compared to that, actually to get a holistic picture. And I think what you guys had told me is that the theme of the words that you all have used is principally, about unity and brotherhood and inclusion. So even though we don't know all the words, but there is, at least now we know the theme that we have to look for the words in. But I think it's a great statement to make in today's environment, where you're talking about inclusion at a very sort of, whether it's culture, whether it's religion, whether it's language, these are all tools for division. But to take one of their tools and then make it a tool for inclusion, I think I want to bow down and sort of just say hats off to you guys, respect. And I think it's great. We should have more of these kind of interventions for people to start thinking about it and understanding it in that context and appreciating it, So I think, thank you. Seriously, thank you guys. So
I think there's another thing that we haven't spoken about, which is also that hierarchy comes into India also through language, a lot of times also through architecture. And here this work aims to kind of flip that, first, of course, with the pyramid, and then with the way the words and the alphabets have come together to create their own.
So, nice. So there's one question. Am I allowed to throw in questions now or later, Anaita?
Absolutely, Rajiv, right now.
Yeah, so Iram has a question. Uh, who thought of using the word Azadi and what was the impetus behind it? You didn't tell me a word and you told her a word. I'm really pissed off. I'm really angry.
She watched the live, okay?
The advantage of living in Delhi. Yeah, so whichever one of you guys wants to answer that.
I don't remember who thought of the word. It's been a huge collaborative exercise, Rajiv. It's a part of the...
Yeah, we would just brainstorm words, would just come and put it together. Yeah.
There are a lot of other, but I would also say that like the work's not just about coming there and finding the words. You know, like whether you find it, whether you don't, everyone's having their own subjective experience with it, and all of them are completely valid.
Fair. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so
Anaita,
much.
over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ayesha, Abhimanyu, and Rajiv again for this very engaging and intriguing conversation. Rajiv, I feel quite left out now, not knowing most of the languages as well. But would also like to thank FCDI, Abhinav and Pallavi Khandelwal and Anupam Sodhi for coming on board as strategic partners, and to our media partners, El Decor. Thank you to all the artists and architects for trusting our vision and making these fabulous installations. I hope we all can meet in better times. And for those who have missed the exhibition at the gallery, we have made 4 separate videos with images of each collaboration. We'll play that now, and I hope you all enjoy viewing it. Thank you.
And thank you, Shefali and Anaita. I think Shrine Empire has been a great place to work with. And thank you. And Gitika and the whole team. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank
you. I must add something on that note before you start your video, Anaita, is that I asked both of them if the gallery sort of nudged you in a particular direction or influenced you or restricted you or sort of advised you in any role. And they said, no, we were given like a blanket sort of approval for whatever we were doing, you know? So I think that is credit to the gallerist.
Thank you, Rajiv. I think we just wanted to keep it very organic, and we wanted the conversations to flow and the artists to have a free sort of a hand in terms of doing whatever they feel would work for the project. And I think it's come together amazingly.
I agree. I have to agree with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Rajiv, is there any other questions which are there to ask?
No, there's just, I think Shivam is one of the kids from my office who made a suggestion for Madhav to put a light inside the cubes through Madhav and Parul. But I think Madhav's already answered that. So
All right. Okay.
that's it.
Yeah. So great. Stay home and stay safe, everyone. Take care. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Anahita. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Anahita.
See you
Bye.
guys.